Australian Catherine Knight always had a well-documented history of madness, starting when she attempted to strangle her first husband to death on their wedding night. The reason? She found it insufficient that he had sex with her only 3 times before falling asleep. Realizing the predicament he was in, the man waited only for the birth of Catherine's expected daughter and then left. Enraged, the narrated woman left her newborn daughter on the train tracks near her home. Fortunately, the child was rescued by a passerby. Soon after, Catherine began dating John Price, a father of 3, and they started living together at his house. Unable to tolerate the woman's threatening insanity, he obtained a restraining order against her, forcing her to leave the house. He even warned his co-workers that if he ever failed to show up for work, she had probably killed him. However, one day he allowed her back into his home for a night of intimacy and fell asleep beside her. Taking advantage of the man's moment of weakness, the woman stabbed him 37 times. When Price didn't show up for work the next day, his co-workers called the police, who arrived at the man's house and found his body completely skinned and headless. Catherine had removed all of Price's skin and left it intact in a single piece, hanging it on a hook at the entrance of the house like a morbid curtain. His head was boiling in a pot on the stove, and pieces of his buttocks had been fried with vegetables and sauce. The latter recipe was arranged on 2 plates on the table with name tags, indicating that they were made especially for Price's 2 older children, who, luckily, had not yet arrived home when the police discovered the atrocity. The deranged woman pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without any possibility of parole.
In 2012, in the small English town of Stockport, brothers Joseph and Anthony Jenkins, around 30 years old, spent the night at a club where they struck up conversation with John Granger, a friendly 33 years old, known for easily making friends at the club. The three decided to head to one of the brothers' apartments for a continuation of the night out. You might wonder what they were doing in that apartment. Alcohol, drugs, prostitutes, if only it were all of that combined. Without apparent or confessed motive, the Jenkins brothers assaulted Job and hitting him on the head with a hammer, stabbing his legs, shooting one of his knees, and finally shooting him in the head. Well, all these atrocities weren't even the end. Subsequently, the Jenkins brothers attempted to decapitate the man using a bread knife. As this obviously didn't work, they resorted to using a chainsaw for the decapitation. The brothers transported John's head and bodies in garbage bags to a desert street nearby and set them on fire. On their way back, the two were stopped in a police checkpoint. Their clothes were stained with blood, revealing the crime they had committed. In one of their pockets, there were shotgun shells they had used to shoot the victim. In the apartment, the police found the blood-soaked chainsaw still plugged in. Joseph and Anthony were sentenced to life imprisonment. The brutal crime horrified everyone involved in the trio and still shocks those who learn about the case today.
Hilda de Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, was a serial killer who murdered 13 people after robbing and sexually assaulting his victims. It all began on June 28, 1984, after a night of cocaine use. When Ramirez invaded the home of 79-year-old Jane Winkle, stabbing her to death. The autopsy revealed that certain blows to her head could have decapitated her, and the signs of sexual abuse were detected. A year later, in March 1985, the Night Stalker claimed another victim, Dale Kazak. Luckily, a roommate, Maria Hernandez, saw the killer enter the residence, leading to a police catch of the suspect. On the same night, Ramirez stole Ticia Lia's car and kidnapped her. Although the police found her alive, but unfortunately she did not survive. The autopsy showed that Ticia was shot in the chest, and the same gun was used in the Dale's death. Newspapers began referring to the criminal as the Night Stalker. More victims were discovered, mostly shot and then stabbed. With a common feature of the crime scene was the site of the satanic ritual. Authorities even called the FBI to form a task force to catch the psychopath. A witness provided the police with Ramirez's car plate number, leading to its location. Fingerprints were collected, and the police database identified the main suspect, Richard Ramirez. Newspaper published the killer's police sketch on the front page, and everyone was looking out. Finally, on August 29, 1985, Ramirez was recognized on the streets after a lengthy police chase and being subdued by three men whose car he had tried to steal, and he was finally arrested. Ramirez's trial was the one of the longest, mostly challenged in USA history, with over 1,000 jurors interviewed and about 100 witnesses. In September 1989, Richard Ramirez was sentenced to death, facing 13 accounts of murders, 5 accounts of attempted murders, 11 counts of sexual assault, and 14 accounts of robbery. The killer died of cancer in 2013 while still awaiting execution on death row at the San Quentin State Prison.
On the morning of January 15, 1947, a mother taking her child for a walk in a Los Angeles neighborhood stumbled upon a gruesome sight: the body of a young naked woman sliced clean in half at the waist. The body was just a few feet from the sidewalk and posed in such a way that the mother reportedly thought it was a mannequin at first glance. Despite the extensive mutilation and cuts on the body, there wasn't a drop of blood at the scene, indicating that the young woman had been killed elsewhere. The ensuing investigation was led by the LA Police Department. The FBI was asked to help, and they quickly identified the body just 56 minutes, in fact, after getting blurry fingerprints via sound photo, a primitive fax machine used by news services. The young woman turned out to be a 22-year-old Hollywood hopeful named Elizabeth Short, later dubbed the Black Dahlia by the press for her rumored penchant for sheer black clothes and for the Blue Dahlia move out at that time. Short's prints actually appeared twice in the FBI's massive collection. More than 100 million were on file at the time. First, she had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary of the Arms Camp Coke in California in January 1943. Second, she had been arrested by the Santa Barbara police for underage drink 7 months later. The Bureau also had her mugshot in its files and provided it to the press. In support of LA police, the FBI ran records checks on potential suspects and conducted interviews across the nation. Based on the early suspicions that the murderer may have had skills in dissection because the body was so cleanly cut, agents were also asked to check out a group of students at the University of Southern California Medical School. And in a tantalizing potential break in the case, the Bureau searched for a match to fingerprints found on an animal's letter that may have been sent to authorities by the killer, but the prints weren't in FBI files. Who killed the Black Dahlia and why? It's a mystery. The murderer has never been found, and given how much time has passed, probably never will be.
BTK is an acronym referring to Bind, Torture, Kill, and it is the nickname given to a serial killer who desired the Wichita region in the state of Kansas, United States for several decades. The BTK began committing murders in the 1970s and continued the crime spree until the 1980s. He sent letters and packages to the local press, police, and victims, providing detailed descriptions of the crimes and doubting authorities. The killer became notorious for cruelty and sadism, as he would torture his victims before killing them. However, the BTK case remained unsolved for many years. I was only the 26th that the killer was finally identified as Dennis Ryder, a respected community member and animal control officer. He was captured after sending a letter to authorities that contained traceable information to a computer floppy disk. Dennis Harder was convicted of 10 murders that occurred between 1974 and 1985. In 25, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The BTK case is notable not only for its heinous crime, but also for role the killer managed to evade capture for so long and how he was ultimately identified and apprehended.